I'm Denise Bernardini. I'll try to see everybody in the room. I'll stay over this way. And this is 4 methods for creating mindfulness in the applied voice lesson. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the SING method. And the SING method stands for setting an intention, isolating from distractions, noticing your body, and giving up judgment. And which one of those do you think will be the hardest? Yes, number 4, always so hard. So setting intentions, there are lots of ways to set intentions, and there can be more than one intention at the same time. I can have my intention for my student when I come in, knowing where they are in that vocal spectrum, but they can have a whole other intention depending on what kind of week they've had or wherever their minds are or how high their anxiety level is. They can have a totally different anxiety level than I do, or, you know, it can be, and it can even be, I can have a couple of intentions. But as long as we have things that are, I won't really say goals because goals imply big time achievement, but as long as we have something measurable that we can talk about, then I am giving them some intention. My intention as a teacher is to give them might be to give them a concept or an objective that can be understood, and theirs might be just to get through the lesson because they haven't practiced all week. You never know. So some examples of intention setting: giving the students ownership. And I love this because I tell them all the time, it's your party. What do you want to do today? And so they then have all the ownership for what's going to occur. So I might say, what's your intention for your lesson today? How can I best serve you in your intentions? And how can we create an intention together? Would you, if you don't have one particularly in mind, let me tell you what my intention is and see if one of those really resonates with you, or if you feel like that's something you want to do today. Or I can even just say, what's your hope for today's lesson? Especially if they come in and they're just like all over the place. I can just simply go, what do you hope to achieve today? And what is your hope for today? So what are some intentions that you all have? Do people care to share, like what the way that they might express the word intention? Maybe you have a different word. A good word. Thoughts?
I think a lot of students that I have always make their intention overcoming some obstacle. They have a specific agenda, music or something like that, or technical aspect.
Right. And in that way you can share the intention, right? You can own it and share it as the teacher. Sometimes a student can come in and that might not be their intention at all, but it's really close to, say, a performance, and their intention is just not to have performance anxiety. And so, you know, we might do some activities or something other than singing regarding that, and to help them get through what can be a really painful experience when you have performance anxiety. The next thing is acknowledging distractions. So, of course, the first thing that comes up in our head is like, do we have phones on us? Are they carrying an iPad? Are they answering their phone? Are they texting as they come in the door? Are they looking at their Instagram or their Snapchat or whatever? But also maybe they just had a fight with their roommate or their parents or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever. It could be a lot of things that could be distracting them. It could just be things at home are great. I mean, it could be so many things, right? It could be that they're worried about COVID. I mean, we're seeing that, right? Like all the things that come with having just been through a pandemic. Maybe they don't feel so great and they're worried that it's going to be that, or, you know, whatever. There's a whole paradigm and a whole continuum of things that can be giving them distraction. And so they know when they come in my room that I'm going to say, it's time to put away any distraction that you might have. Can you put away the phone? Can you put away the iPad? Or, you know, unless they're using their music with it, and a lot of them do. But I can also ask them if they seem a little out there. hey, what's going on? What's distracting you right now? Can you tell me what's distracting you? And then we sort of name it to tame it, so to speak. And that's something from cognitive behavior therapy. So it's a way where if you name the thing, and then you can kind of get a hold of it. So if they're like, well, I had a terrible fight with my roommate, I just can't think about anything else because I'm so angry. I can just say, well, how is that going to help you in your voice lesson today? And do you want to continue to learn? Do you want to let go of that? Or do you want to allow that to keep you from learning today? And they almost always choose learning. And then they're like, you're right. I'm going to just put it out of my mind and I'm going to accept that I might be a little distracted. But once I begin to sing, I think I'll get better. And they want the opportunity to let that go. So what are some things that you can ask them to do to acknowledge their distraction and just put it out of their mind? And remember, I think that it can be tricky, right? Like it could open up a whole can of worms that maybe you don't really want to have to deal with, or maybe you feel like you're not prepared to deal with it in the voice lesson, right? But what are some ways? Here's some. I sense that you're distracted. What's keeping you from being present? Can we all agree? And I sometimes do this like in my diction classes. I can say, or in vocal ped, I can say, can we all agree that the phone or the computer just doesn't have a place in our learning environment today? Can we put those away? And they're usually really great about going, yeah, sure, and they put them aside. So before we center and get ready for a lesson, what's on your mind? Can you give me 2 words that's on your mind? Give them an opportunity to share, get it off their chest. Maybe, and say, be lean with your words. That's a really great thing that I like to say. Can you be lean with your words? Because they'll take up your whole hour, right? But if you're like, can you be lean with your words and give me an idea of what's bothering you today? They can maybe, and sometimes it even helps them to clarify what's really bothering them. And then you can move on and start to sing. Does anybody have anything that they do in the lesson? Care to share some of those kinds of things?
I do something similar, but I add kinesthetics to that.
Oh, great. Share that.
Stretching and sometimes yoga poses or just movement in general to try to release some of the extraneous body tension that may also come with all that baggage.
Yes.
I would add breathing to that,
Yeah, absolutely.
some breathing exercises.
Yeah, for sure. And that's absolutely one of the things that I do in my lesson, and they know that they're going to get like breath of fire with me, or they're going to get some kind of Wim Hof, or they're going to get some kind of breathing exercise with me, and so they come prepared, knowing that they're going to have to breathe if they're fully anxious, or I might have them do alternate nostril breathing. So some things like that. And I love the kinesthetic part. I love having them stretch, having them move, and doing some kind of movement. I love that. Thank you for that addition. And so noticing the body, it's funny because I think as artists, it's something we definitely do, right? We can even create something out of how we feel in our body. We can create sound from that, and noticing those somatic sensations. But I find that young students, undergrad students, they're terrible about being able to say what their body is feeling. They'll say, well, I feel a kind of way, or I feel a certain way. Well, what do you mean by that? And they don't want to talk about the sensations in their body. And there can be so many reasons why, right? It can be that it might trigger a memory for them. It can be that it's very uncomfortable, that the last time they felt that way was not a great experience. Or maybe they just aren't comfortable talking about their bodies at all. Maybe that wasn't something that was part of their vocabulary in their home life. So helping them to feel comfortable with saying something about what they're noticing in their body and giving them a safe space to do that is really important in a mindful sort of environment in your applied lesson. But it's also a struggle for teachers too, especially in this day and age, we have to be really careful about what you say. And so you may feel nervous about that. I might feel nervous about saying that to a male student, or a male teacher might feel really nervous about saying that to a female student. It can be funky, right? So I have done some things like made a big piece of paper that's on the back of my wall that talks about somatic sensations. And I've just listed those sensations and what that might be related to in vocal pedagogy. I'm like, well, if you can't think of it, or you can't say it, and you can't articulate it, if it's ineffable for you, can you say what number on the door might be close to what you're feeling? And they can do that. They can be like, I'm feeling number 10. I feel really tight right here. Okay, well, let's talk about that tightness. Let's talk about why you feel tight. Or they might say, I feel really tight in my throat. Well, let's talk about that. What do you think that might be? And giving them some language and some vocabulary about those somatic sensations can help open the door for them to feel that they have a safe place to talk about that and to not feel so self-conscious. Anybody else want to add to that? What do you think some reasons might be? Does anybody have an idea about that? What might be the reasons why you feel that students are stuck sometimes talking about what they feel in their own bodies?
Just like an aversion to vulnerability.
It can definitely be that, for sure. It can also be like negative body image.
Yes, for sure.
Just negative body image. They're like, why do you want to talk about my body? I hate my body, right? Yeah.
Well, depending on their age, I work a lot with high schoolers, and their males go through such a cataclysm of body change. Women to a lesser degree as far as the overt changes, but there's so much development that happens, and sometimes they just don't know what to do with the sensations that they're having.
Yes.
I'm also just add a general lack of body awareness.
Yeah, and I think back to when I was young, and I don't know if I had a lot of body awareness until I got pregnant. And then once and you've got 5 people in the room, and they're all doing their thing, and you can't be modest or whatever. And I was raised in a really modest home. Never once saw my father in his underwear my entire growing up. Never. And so, those kinds of experiences really make you have to be aware of your body. And I think when you have children, those things, and if you're with someone who's having children, then seeing them go through that helps you talk about it. Yes.
And I also think that, along with perhaps if the teacher-student relationship is quite new, it might not be, especially for younger students, it's really difficult to talk about yourself anyway, let alone with somebody you don't know that well yet. And plus, you're singing in front of them. What is more vulnerable than that?
Right. So we're asking our students to be vulnerable in so many different kinds of ways. And that can be really, really a struggle experience for young students. So helping them have vocabulary, I think, is super important. Vocabulary that feels safe, and also something other than I feel anxious to say, So, and singing, we talk about the body and all the somatic sensations, and we do that all the time. We talk about breath, we talk about support, we talk about, various kinds of phonation, asking them to describe and create sensations that they can later replicate in the practice room. And if they can't talk about it, then giving them those words on the door, maybe giving it to them on a card or a piece of paper, something like that can really help them. And also you have to pay attention to things like culture and religion and socioeconomic status and even their own health conditions. Some students are really very vulnerable to touch because their bodies hurt and they're sore, or, just various things like that. And I always try to remember You know, old school teaching, right? Like, I'm gonna touch your body, no permission. I'm not gonna ask permission. I'm just gonna come up and touch you. And so I have to really remember that I need to ask for permission and to really make sure that the student's okay. If I want to say, what's this sensation here that you feel, or can you get more depth in your breath here? And that can really be a sticky wicket for sure. But it's really important to help them learn the benefits of listening to their body and knowing their body and developing that deeper understanding of their physical sensations and needs. That can deepen the creative process, but also deepen those pedagogical things that we really want to talk about, like breath and like what does it mean to support? What does it mean to sing in your mask? Because those are just words, and without the ability for those sensations to be replicated, they mean nothing. So having lots of conversation around noticing the body. And I think we've already pretty much discussed this, but if anybody wants to add anything to the discussion, I love to learn from my colleagues. So how important is it that you express noticing in your body in your lessons? Are there other ways that you do it that I haven't talked about?
I think it's important. I think sometimes students feel like the strong thing to do is like power through any discomfort that they have, and that can end up hurting them in the long run. So like just being able to start opening up that conversation as part of being an artist is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of misinformation about how we think our body is working. That's important to really understand where your joints are, for example, mapping the body.
Yeah, I think having some things like body mapping workshops and things like that are really important. It gives them vocabulary.
Yes.
And just being able to give them some vocabulary and words that feel safe and don't feel weird or icky or whatever, whatever they may say, depending on their age. Anything else?
The conversation about vocal health, how to take care of your body so that whatever happened could be avoided. Hydrating, foods to avoid acid reflux. Yes. All those kinds of things that are so important for everybody, but especially when this is your instrument.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The instrument as your body, it's really important that they understand alcohol. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And just recognizing that discomfort and is not just normal. There's going to be reasons behind that.
Yes.
And not to accept it.
Exactly. I had a really wild experience this past semester in the fall. We were doing Venus and Adonis, and one of my course members came in and he was really kind of low in his energy, and he was sitting on the side of the stage, and I was like, hey man, what's going on? Are you okay? And he goes, I just don't have any energy. I just don't really feel very good. And I said, oh yeah? And I said, you're sweating. He's like, yeah, I know. And I said, I need you to leave this space right now. And I said, and go straight to the clinic and have them do a rapid test. Because, I think you're running a fever. It was 4 days before opening night, and it ran through the cast, and it was influenza B. And he did not recognize in his own body how uncomfortable it was. And I found that just mind-boggling. Like, how do you not know that you're sick? He was running 103-degree temperature, and all he could say was, I just don't have any energy. No, dude, you're sick. I said to him after he came back to, rehearsals or the last performance, he made it back by the last performance. And I said, did your back and legs hurt? And he went, yeah. I said, but you didn't mention that as your symptom when you talked to me. And he was like, I don't know, I don't know. And I thought, two things ran through my mind. how do you feel normally if that's something that you don't recognize as being bad? And how do I get them to have the ability to say, my legs hurt, my back hurts, and I think I'm running a fever. And I think part of it is they're also afraid that they're going to have COVID and they will have given it to everyone. So if they just ignore it, it'll go away.
That's true.
Right? But really and truly, it would have been better had he had COVID, because pretty much everybody had had their shots. He had already had COVID, right? But he sent influenza B through the whole cast. As soon as he said, I went straight to CVS and went, I need you to vaccinate me for everything that could possibly be going around right now. And I told the cast, like, go get vaccinated. And none of them did. And, so it's important, I think, that we have this discussion of, this is your instrument. You have to do everything to keep it safe, keep it well, be able to talk about it, and acknowledge when you're ill, not only for your own safety, but for all the other people around you that also have their body as their instrument.
And also, as an allergy sufferer, I certainly have learned over the years how to deal with my allergies. It took me about 10 years to figure it out. I'm a West Coast person, I'm from California. When I moved here, or to the East Coast anyway, it's a whole new set of flora and fauna to deal with. Like, oh my Lord, the first time I got one of those, sinus headache things, infections, I didn't know what that was. And the ability to recognize that, but to know how to deal with it. And there was a wonderful presentation about this earlier this week on that we can all watch the effects of even OTCs on the voice and what they do and how you, but to find a great otolaryngologist and to learn how to take care of your instrument is, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. There's nothing you can do.
That's right. That's right.
We have to learn how to take care of our instruments.
And I think you're right. I think impressing on them, not to see an ENT, but to see an otolaryngologist,
Yes.
go straight to the specialist for the voice,
Yes.
because they'll think that an ENT is good enough, but it generally isn't. No, it isn't.
They have to be trained to check in with themselves physically, because we spend so much time virtually that we don't even, we're really practiced in that, so that you're kind of away from your body many times.
Yeah,
In
I
your
don't think
mind.
Zoom's helped for sure. Yeah. I mean, especially for young kids who spent 3 years of high school-ish or junior high, right? First 2 years of college for some of the kids that we're teaching right now, they spent it on Zoom. And they didn't have to worry about how they felt, and they might give it to other people, only their family. And they, yeah, I don't think it was, well, we all know it was not great. It was not great for our students. Yes. Were you gonna say? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, beyond just being sick, noticing other symptoms in your body that may be caused by other things that you do. My legs ache today, I wonder if I have COVID, but they neglect to think about the 3-mile run that they went on.
Right.
2 months yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, I think it's just understanding cause and effect, and that everything we do with our bodies has an effect on the body, whether
Yeah.
that's being dehydrated or eating McDonald's too late at night or,
Yeah. And we're seeing more and more instances of GERD in younger and younger students, acid reflux in younger and younger students. And, it's the all-American diet, right? The other thing that we haven't talked about, though, is the sensations that people have in their body, our students have in their body, that are not about health or food in the body, but rather here. Their mental health, the way that they feel. They can feel things in the body that's an indicator of what's happening mentally, what's happening emotionally, and they might not be able to recognize that thing they're experiencing is an anxiety attack. That thing they're experiencing is maybe anxiety with a little A, or that could be plain old fight or flight, or maybe it's their pulse is racing and they feel a little because they're angry or they're nervous. They're not prepared for their lessons, so they feel nervous, or whatever, and they feel these things in their body and they don't really understand or know what that is either. And talk about performance anxiety. That's the right? You have performance anxiety. What's wrong with you? How can you be a music major, a voice major, if you can't stand to get up and sing and you're afraid of it? What are you doing? So they don't talk about it at all. They don't talk about it. They're not gonna talk about it. It's a thing that they silently suffer through. And until they're backstage, and when you see what they're doing, and they're pacing, and they're maybe vomiting or whatever, but they're not talking about what's happening in their body, and therefore you can't talk about it in your lesson. It's normal, and we really have to start to kind of normalize performance anxiety, right? I have performance anxiety today, so me about me, like there's a little bit of anxiety where I was like, oh God, here we go, so I mean, imagine what that's like for them, and they've been preparing all semester to sing on this departmental or whatever, and they can't talk about what's happening or know to ask you, what can I do about performance anxiety? Well, I have all kinds of things that you can do for performance anxiety. But if I don't know that as your teacher, if you're not telling me about those bodily sensations, I can't help you. You got to talk to me. So ways to help them connect. Do we have other ideas besides mine of writing down possible things they feel in their body on the back of my door? I love the movement, and this is one way that I like to help them connect their idea or their body to the music that they're listening to, that they might be about to sing. So like, let's say they're listening to their favorite Renee Fleming singing something, and they, how often do we get this where they just sort of disconnect from their body and they just stand and sing, right? But I like to ask them before they even sing it to move their body to what she's doing or to what they're hearing, maybe just the accompaniment, and then see if they can replicate that when they sing it, even down to the rubato, even down to the way that they want the body to move for the higher note. And then of course, without tension, right? Like we're not asking them to pull their shoulders up or something, but just allow their bodies to experience the music they're about to sing. Give their bodies some permission to move to what they're singing. So they don't just park and bark. And you said it, yoga movements, it's in here. Moving their arms. Yeah, you want to say something?
I just, when I have an area that I want a student to focus on, like the muscle movement in a particular area or tension, I sometimes put a little strip of Scotch tape right there to make them feel it.
That's great.
And then they become really hyper aware of it for a few minutes. They get desensitized.
No, I
after a while, but-
love that. That's great. That brings it to their awareness.
Yeah.
Brings it to the forefront of their awareness. I like that a lot. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you. What else?
In general, just touch. Having trouble being grounded, actually having them touch the floor and feel the floor.
Mhm.
And just connect with things around them so that they're not alone at an island themselves.
Yeah, sometimes they dissociate, right? They sort of just kind of get in this other place and sing, but it's like nobody's home. And it's because they're kind of outside their body, not really experiencing it. They're just kind of going through the motions. And that doesn't make them the best artists, right? Anything else?
Well, maybe it's a bit extreme.
I love extreme. Don't do it.
I think making a video of yourself and watching yourself is illuminating. And
I think that's not extreme at all. I
use
think
that
that's great.
smartphone, put it to use.
Mhm.
It's a great tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
It's really hard to do that, you know, to watch yourself or to listen to yourself.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
and also, all these things take such time, right? And you try to cram this into a half hour, 45-minute hour lesson or whatever. You really need, if you can spend time with your student, you know, and just whatever time it takes, it just seems like we never have enough time, right, to do the mentoring we want to do and to teach the whole student in the whole way that we want to do it. There's never enough time. But to at least give them the tools so that they can help themselves, whether it's through the app, the Accompanist app, or, you know, or a smartphone, but to show them what to listen for, what to listen, how, what's appropriate, you know, how you can make it better, point out what's really great. Wow, listen to yourself there. People listen to you all day, you know, whatever. You know, here's how we can make this better.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that idea. I do a lot of that with opera when they're struggling with their acting. And you're like, more. And they're like, more. I feel so dumb. And then they see it and they're like, oh my God, you're right. It needs so much more. Right? They have no idea. Okay, here's the hard one. Right, giving up judgment. Perfection. Wouldn't it be fantastic world if we were all capable of perfection? Students get really stifled and timid when they judge themselves and they're worried they might not be perfect in every way. Thank you, social media. How can we help them let go of judging themselves 24/7? So the word judge is not allowed in my studio. I'm like, we're not, this is not a place of judgment. Now that doesn't mean that we are not thinking critically. It doesn't mean that we're not trying to get better. It just means that we are not going to go, that's terrible or that's wrong. Those kinds of really judgy kind of words that can really make students shut down. So in the voice lesson, I might say, you know what? They'll go, oh gosh, you know, that was so sharp and it was so edgy. And I'll just say, you know what? I have these ears and you can just let me discern or be the judge. I shouldn't have put that word in there. Be the discerner of what is flat or sharp. You just sing. There is no good or bad, just sing. And when you're done, we'll talk about it. I like to give my students a chance to sing once through their piece before I make them stop every 3 notes. Because I personally hated that in a voice lesson where I would sing 3 notes and you know, and she'd go, stop. You know, it feels really defeating. So there's no duality in singing. There's no black and white. It's about taste, isn't it? So much of it is about taste. And just look at your judging sheets and NATS. Well, one person's like, yes, 95, and another one will be like 62, you know, or whatever. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so much about taste. So if you can help them understand that there's no black and white, this style is bad, that style is good, it's not a thing anymore. And it's all about how you want to express yourself and how we can help them express themselves in a healthy, meaningful way. And how can I judge what's unique to you? If your voice is naturally bright and it just is naturally bright, it doesn't help for me to tell you to be woofy. It doesn't help for me to take as your teacher, to take your voice out of its true nature because my taste is different. Does that make sense? And so by not judging them and allowing them the space to just use the voice lesson as, say, an experiment or a lab and try a variety of different things, then we can come to an agreement of, does that feel good? Does that feel great in your body or no? And if it doesn't feel good in your body, it's probably not the best use of your technique. Let's talk about another way that we can do that. And like, if it's out of tune, then it's probably the vowel. Change the vowel. Do something a little different with that word. It's not about you as a person. So helping them to figure out that everything they think is not true. And in fact, everything I think isn't true. And to let go of some of that negative talk that goes on in their head And even in my own head, letting that go and realizing that, I have one voice that likes me and I have another voice that really hates me and wants to tell me some really crappy things. And to not listen to that because that's all not always true. I like to talk about the skill tree and I'll tell them, look, seeing is kind of like growing a tree. And when you grow that tree, you're going to have fruit up there that represents all the different skills that you need as a singer. Some are going to be ripe, some are not going to be quite ripe. And we're not going to want to pick from the things just yet that aren't really ripe. And maybe they're in between and they just need a little more growth. And helping them see that it's normal to not be great at everything, but that singing is a long-term skill and not a short-term skill, and that everything they see on Instagram and all that is not true. Those people that make it seem easy and they're really young, they've probably been building those skills for years. It doesn't come, I don't know a single person that it came so easily to, they never needed another pair of ears. I can't name one. So when you create a classroom and a studio that's filled with grace and flexibility, they feel like they can relax and they can be themselves and they can learn to create in a space that feels really safe. Are there other ways that you guys do things that help your students know that they're not going to be judged or that things are not going to be black and white? Yes.
In like studio class and lessons, I make people do 3+1s. So every piece of constructive criticism has to be preceded by 3 positive attributes.
I like
It
that.
takes a long time for them to adopt it.
I love that. Three positives to 1 negative in a studio class where everybody's having that conversation. And that helps your students learn that you do need to be a critical thinker, but you also need to be able to identify and think about the things that are working.
To remember that this is all about human experience,
Mhm.
education, and that the human experience is not always pretty. And and give them permission to create quote unquote ugly sounds
Yes.
and not be so concerned with things being perfect all the time and things being pretty. That there's beauty in all things and that it's not like and it's a very liberating thing that I found.
I love to show my students who are classical that video, a video of Pavarotti singing Nessun Dorma, and then Aretha Franklin singing Nessun Dorma.
Oh.
And I love to have them look at that and go, which one is the best? And and they're like, I don't know. I like them both. And showing them that there's duality there. That hers is great, but for very different reasons than Pavarotti's is great. The fact that she just stepped up and said, "He's sick, I'll sing it," and you're like, what? And yeah, of course, it's not perfect. And she breathes in the middle of words and all the things, but there's a lot there to also love, her expressiveness, her ability to improvise, all those things. And finding ways to love both of those also really, I think, helps students realize that there's not one perfect way, that there's a multitude of ways to do something. And also, again, taste.
I think we use laughter a lot too, like ways to break the ice so you don't feel uncomfortable by everybody being silly in the room is a way to keep it comfortable, because as soon as you laugh, you let go of a lot of that tension. But also I think I only let my students start with positives and then only carefully add negatives, because to hear your peers criticize you in front of everybody is really intense. And also not everybody, they don't know as much as we know about what they need to hear at this moment. So we're trying to filter what is being said to them in a safe way, I think is important.
I think in a studio class, one of the things that I like to do in studio class is I like to say, okay, you guys, what did we really enjoy and love about this performance? And they all talk, and say great things. And I'm like, And what about this performance did you see in yourself? What's the thing you're working on that you see here? And they're like, oh,
That's
have
great,
this-
yeah.
we have this thing in common, you know. I don't breathe really great. Like I keep breathing high, and I noticed that in one place you took a breath high. Maybe that's something we both need to work on, you know. And having that shared imperfection experience, I think is really valuable to them to know they're not alone and that it's normal not to do everything perfectly. So, anything else anybody wants to share there?
I think the thing you said, like, where not all your thoughts are true, I think that's really important. The whole meta thinking where you're recognizing your own thoughts. And it's like, yeah, we all have that critical voice. You can notice that critical voice and then say, like, is that voice actually helping you right now or not? One of the most like amusing activities anyone had me ever do was in a theater class where we just did a scene as normal, and you had to raise your hand every time you judged yourself, and then you weren't allowed to judge yourself for judging yourself. You just noticed it, and it was really like a great way to bring that into awareness.
I like that too, and I think you totally incorporate that in a lesson. So, because it's not just important that we graduate or we send out of our studios great little vocal pedagogues, right? They need to be mentally and emotionally stable and healthy as well. And I'm telling you, in my opinion, the voice lesson can either add to that unhealthiness or it can add to the healthiness, depending on what school of thought you're from. I mean, I've had some teachers, and we all have those stories, right, of teachers who abused us or, you know, whether mentally, emotionally, or made us afraid to sing, or a choir director that told us to go to the back because we're too loud, or, you know, we all have those stories. Like, we all have those stories. So it's not just about being technically, you know, great singers. The voice lies here, or the mechanism, I say, lies here, but the voice is here. It really is. And if this gets sideways, the voice will follow. The mechanism will follow.
I think it's really important to silence that mean critical voice in the students, and I make them, the ones that have a really hard time with it, to write down everything that you're saying in your head. And if you wouldn't say that to your friend, you shouldn't say it to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, that name it to tame it thing in cognitive behavior therapy is very important, for sure. So one of the things that I do in all my classrooms, and they know that I'm woo-woo, right? But I'm a meditator, and yes, I'm a meditator and I'm a mindful person. So I try to ask them to write a meditation that they would like to use at the beginning of their lesson. And this might be an example. So as I enter this lesson today, I acknowledge my gratitude for the creative space that I will hold. I will set my intention as I acknowledge my distractions and I let them go. They will not impede my growth as an artist. I will notice my body, its tensions, the breath, its freedom, and the way that it serves me. I'm grateful to my body for serving as my instrument. I will not judge today as good or bad, achievement or failure, but rather an opportunity for understanding, knowledge, and resilience. Art does not possess duality, and many things can exist at the same time. Before like a class, like a vocal ped class or a diction class, we spend the day that we look at the syllabi, we spend that day writing a meditation for our class. And then they know when they come, we're going to arrive and we're going to sit for a minute and we're going to do this. And I have found that my students are far more calm. They're also very much aware of those thoughts and can watch them go by and be like, yep, there went that thought. And I don't have to acknowledge it or act again about it or react to it. It's just a thought. And it really helps them be really good little meditators, even though they might not admit that that's what they're doing. So what I would like you to do is write a meditation. Just take out a piece of paper or write on your phone or whatever, but write a little meditation that you think might fit your classroom or if you don't want to call it a meditation, like an arrival or something like that. And then I would love for us to share them and talk about them a little bit. What they might fit your students. And also there's going to be a QR code to this at the end, so you can have it. What might you change? What would be different? Would it be shorter? Would it be? I think it's great to put gratitude in something like that. It's really hard to be negative when you're full of gratitude or when you realize how lucky you are to have talent and to be in school, to do and study and hone that talent and develop that skill. And how many times do you go into a doctor's office or someplace like that and they're like, you know, I wanted to be a singer, but my parents wouldn't let me. I hear that all the time. Having the ability to be grateful. This is just an example, you know, of things that, it's just an example. If I have my students write it, it might not say anything like this, but I like to give them the power to create their own mindful meditation and take that out into the world and practice it on the daily, so that they have ownership of their thoughts and some control over that little voice that really likes to talk about all the ways they don't add up. All the things that could be doing better. All the ways they don't compare. Anybody have anything they want to add or?
I don't know if it's good to do this or not, but setting an intention is great. Is it helpful to add the intentions that you came in with that you're substituting, like you're changing your mindset, so like naming something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's why, and it's one of the reasons why I leave it blank, is because I feel like every student will have a different thing, a different way, and everybody in the classroom can have a different. They can just say their own out loud if they want to. Anybody have anything else? It's really hard to talk to musicians about mindfulness, and I'll tell you why, because you're already mindful, right? Like, especially music teachers. I just did this at a contemplation for higher education conference, and they ate it up, and it cracked me up because it's like musicians have been doing this for a millennia. It's all we do. How does that feel in your body? What would you like to do today? You know, all the things that we do as singers it might as well be Buddhist. In a lot of ways, it's very, very mindful, right?
Try to talk to them about they come to the playground.
Mm-hmm.
The studio is, my studio is your playground.
Yes.
We're here to just explore and try to make it as fun as we can, because the more fun it is, the deeper the learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so many of them hate to go to the practice room. Like, they love to come to their lesson, but they hate to go to the practice room because the practice room is rife with all kinds of crazy things. And if they're one of those that are like, I hate practicing, I hate going to the practice room, I feel like everybody's listening, people always interrupt me, or whatever their reason, or I go there and I can't do what we did last week and I feel like such a failure. Then I'm like, well, let's write a meditation before that will help you, that you can say and you can sit with before you go into the practice room, maybe it'll help you. You know, making those things, and if you don't like the word meditation, use prayer or whatever, or let's write a visualization, or let's write some words of affirmation. Whatever verbiage you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable with meditation, but you know, it's up to you.
I invite them to be selfish in taking that time for themselves.
Yes.
So that they don't feel guilty about focusing on themselves
Right.
for an hour, either with me or in the practice room. That's your time. That's your time to be selfish and to work on yourself. Not to allow anything else to intrude.
I love that, and I would go even one step further, saying it's actually not selfish.
Yes.
That taking that time for yourself, you deserve it. You have the right to claim an hour a day to yourself without anyone interrupting you.
That's how I tend to get them past their nervousness about the practice.
I think that's great. That's a really, I think that's very, very insightful and very intuitive on your part. But you know, to recognize that they may be feeling like, well, but you know, then my friends need me, or they come and they're like, hey, let's go do this, and I feel bad because I can't go with them, or whatever might be going on, or you know.
You know, kind of piggyback on that, I think that that's one thing, if we could all learn to love the sound that's coming out of our bodies. And that not in an egotistical way, but how can you not love the sound that's coming out of your body if you want others to love it?
Right. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many times this year I've had more than one student say to me, I hate my voice.
Aw,
Yeah,
that's so sad.
it's very sad. It's very sad. And it's usually because they want to be something they're not. One of them's a dramatic tenor and he wants to sing, you know, musical theater in a really small way. He's like, why can't I do it? Let's talk about the nature of your instrument. But yeah. Yeah. I think we're good on this. So yeah, ask your class or your lessons to create their own. And I just love that when gratitude and your heartfelt intention meet, the doors to heaven open wide in greeting. I love that saying. It's such a beautiful saying and so true. So y'all, this is my shameless plug. This is from my book, just was released in February the 1st. And it's called The Mindfulness of Singing, and it's creating a harmonious mind, body, and spirit. And the sing method is in every chapter in a different way, depending on what we're trying to do. I have some with me, but you can also get it on Amazon, or you can order it on Barnes and Noble, or any place where books are sold. So this is, yeah, so that's my shameless plug. And if you want the presentation, here's a scan. Yeah. Anybody have questions? Anything they'd like to add? I have no idea. I haven't really been paying attention. I think I'm probably early on ending, or maybe just right. Okay, good. But anybody have anything you want to throw out there? Thank you for coming. Thank you. Great. Did everybody get it? Oh, okay. And thank you for the plug and things.